Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to a new episode of Social Confoes. I'm your host Diego, together with my co-host Jean-Luc. Jean-Luc, welcome back.
Hey Diego, welcome back. How's everything going? Or let's do that first before we do a promo. So, how are you doing, Diego?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm quite busy actually. Every night at 8 p.m. local time. It's been a busy week, but I guess we'll get into the topic a little bit later. But before we do that, we quickly want to give you a couple of announcements. So Diego, go and do your best promo for Social Confoes.
So yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Confoes. We're also on Instagram. Follow us there at Confoes, and also subscribe to our newsletter at confoes.substack.com, which will be heading out to your mailbox quite soon. With that being said, speaking of last week, we talked about posting. You showed me a little behind the scenes of organic posting, especially on your Facebook page, and I've been following it a bit. You saw quite an increase in shares and engagement in comments, and you've been kind of doubling down on that with an interesting competition.
Because the
And
competition wasn't even a topic when we spoke last week.
exactly. So what's the competition about? What are we diving in today? And basically, what's going on behind the scenes?
Okay, so to give full transparency, this topic came about when somebody on Facebook, if I remember correctly, it was Alvin Roosevelt. So shout out to him for starting the discussion about what's actually the national bird or the national animal for Suriname. What's the national? There were a couple of things to ask. One of them was the national animal for Suriname. The other thing was the national plant for Suriname. So if we go abroad and people ask us like, "What's our national animal?" It would be, I think, we would say the kiskadi, the grietje as we call it in Surinamese, is kind of a kiskadi, and we would consider a lot of us, but it isn't written in stone, as at least as far as I know.
Yeah,
Some
because
people
the
would say
first
the
thing that comes into
yeah,
my mind when I hear that
yeah.
question is the frog.
The frog. There's a special kind of frog.
Yeah,
But yeah, do you want to have a frog as your symbol? Would you say the jaguar because the jaguar is also like
that was the
pretty
second
big in
option coming up
Suriname?
into my mind. Yeah.
Um, so you could even, I mean, there are different directions to go. So there's already a discussion starting from that. Then the second one was like the plant, like what plant? Would it be a fayalobi or would it be the kankan tree, which is like this big
Yeah, that's the
tree?
first one that comes into mind if we're
Exactly.
talking about plants.
And then I was like, and then I think the third one that came up was like food. Like somebody mentioned it. I'm pretty sure it wasn't my idea to begin with. I at least think somebody mentioned it. And when I heard food or when I saw food, it was like, I want to try this. So I reached out to Alf and was like, hey, I'm pretty sure we can do something with this. And he was like, okay, fill me in. I'm down. And basically, I started building this concept for like, what would it be like to have a food competition? And a food competition on what's the national food for Suriname. So I quickly built a short list. And because I wasn't fully confident that my short list was good enough, I crowdsourced from
Mhm.
Facebook. So I asked people like, hey, listen, if you would think of a national food for Suriname, uh, fill me in. What would you choose? And then suggestions came in, and I kind of incorporated those suggestions with the shortlist that I already had. And then I asked everybody, all my colleagues, to give a score. So basically, there's a pre-ranking, which is a score of people working at Ineffable and people that commented on Facebook. And based on those two insights, we made a top 16. So the top 16 is basically a top 16 of different Surinamese dishes, um, different
Okay,
backgrounds. Go
so the
ahead.
first question is, you got a short list, you crowdsourced some dishes, and my first thing is top 16, was it right? A
Top
bracket style.
16. Yeah,
Okay.
bracket style, Sweet 16. Yeah.
How did you guys decide on what to face off between each other in the starting brackets? Was it at random or was it
No,
a
full ranking.
rating system?
Full ranking. It was a rating system. So we had a full ranking, top 16, number one against number 16, number two against number 15, number
Got
three
it.
against number 14, and then also making sure that one and two can only meet in the finale.
Yeah, so they're at opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes. So the top four is one against four, two against three.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the round before that, it's one against eight, or at least the
Assuming that,
winner, the
yeah,
winner of 1 versus 16 against 8 versus 9.
because there could be an underdog surprise
And there
that, you
have
know.
been some underdog surprises. So not in the top four, of course. There are no surprises in the top four, but we did get number five being kicked out by, I think, uh, was it five against? Let me quickly before I say something stupid. Um, Number five against number 12.
And
So
what are
number
those?
12 beat up number five. So that there were already two upsets,
What
but
was
they
the
were
matchup between 5 and 12 that kind of surprised you?
so the surprise matchup was uh, uh, curry duck against moxialesi. So masala ducks, which is curry duck, against moxialesi, which is mixed rice. But the thing with mixed rice is like there are a lot of variations,
Yeah.
and there are enough people that support at least one of those variations. Where with the curry, like there are some people that are like, yeah, but I don't eat duck, and the curry duck kind of beat the other curry recipes out of it. So it was either going to be curry duck or curry chicken or curry lamb, and curry duck was like the highest rated out of those. So that's where one upset came. So I do feel that one was completely fair in the sense that mixed rice, I mean, there's a very big spectrum, whereas curry duck there isn't. But still, I never imagined that curry duck would lose that competition. Even still now, like it was very close as well. I think it was the closest one. I think the the gap was like 300 votes when we closed off the poll.
300 vote
Whereas
gap. So how many votes did you get on average between?
so now I think every competition gets around at least 4,000 votes. Like every
Wow.
matchup gets at least 4,000 votes. People are really looking forward to it because 2,000 of those 4,000 plus votes are within the first hour. So people do actually commit to 8 o'clock to come and vote, show their disgust if they don't agree with the matchup, support their
I
favorite dish
I
if
can
they,
imagine that.
yeah,
Like, how can this go through to the next round and then
yeah.
getting
So
a
like,
paragraph of reasons why things should happen. So what does this tell you as a social media marketer or as a just competition runner?
so there's several things to take in consideration. There are a lot of comments on shares that don't realize yet that this is a bracket system, right? The most people that actually vote, by now they have voted for a couple of days, so they fully understand there's a bracket system. We're getting to our last matchup of round one tomorrow, and there are already some people who have followed the competition that know what the matchup is going to be about. Also, what's different from a normal Sweet 16 bracket is that the public knows beforehand what the matchups are. To kind of keep it a little bit more fun, we've actually only announced the matchup when it's time to vote. So a lot of people have been waiting to see like what matchups are there. And now when the first round is done tomorrow, the final vote for the first round will be done tomorrow. Um, then everybody knows what's at stake and what the matchups will be for the quarterfinals.
Okay. So can you show us something on what's the status now? Like what's gone through before we head up to the last bracket tomorrow?
Okay, so basically it's a Sweet 16. Um, and here's the thing, that's also something that I learned. So the first thing that I learned is that we are a melting pot, so we don't have one national dish. We actually have like 20 to 30 national dishes. So basically, this is more your favorite national dish than to say this is the national dish. So that's one of the things that I had to change on day one of the competition to avoid that people would sink into a conversation like, yeah, but this dish is much more of a national dish because this dish only features ingredients that are made in Suriname,
Yeah,
or these were here. This dish already
before.
exists because it was from the original inhabitants of Suriname. To get that away, we kind of had to say like, okay, listen, this is our favorite national dish instead of the national dish, because then in your voting, you would also have to assume like, okay, but how does it represent? Because some of the dishes is mostly a national dish because everybody in Suriname
Exactly.
eats it every day. And it's really easy to get, and you can go to any restaurant and they sell it. Whereas some
Something
national
like
dishes,
duck curry is very niche.
very niche, you can only get it in certain places. But roti, you can get roti everywhere, right? The same thing with, I think, um, that's a good soda you can get everywhere. Like these are like really, and then alacondre soup. It's not, you cannot find it anywhere. And also another thing that I learned is like people were upset that I wasn't putting soups against each other and rice dishes against each other. But in the end, we kind of knew already that soda
Yeah.
was the only soup that was gonna make it past the first round.
I'm just looking through the
Yeah.
bracket of the list available right now, and
Mm.
basically these are the picks I would have gone to with as well.
Oh, that's easy to say now, Diego.
No, no, seriously. If I look at the matchups,
Yeah. So I think the hardest matchups. So let's start with the first matchup: roti versus alacondre soup. Alacondre basically means all different nations together, which is a melting pot soup, which is a very good Surinamese soup to represent Suriname. But
not a
against
fan.
roti that everybody eats every day, I mean, it's not gonna happen. The second one was peanut soup, which was ranked in the top eight, but lost to Hair Harry, which is really another very national dish. His Hair Harry is much more of,
A mix of the aardvruchten. What's that
yeah,
in
yeah, it's different variations to potatoes, but sweet potato, potato, and other
cassava? Yeah,
cassava combined with often very nice salted fish, different kinds of fish, and a good heri is probably one of the nicest dishes to eat. Like if you ever experienced a good heri, it's. But peanut soup was actually ranked higher, but heri knocked peanut soup out of the park because a lot of people don't realize that. First of all, it's a soup, but secondly, there are people that are allergic to peanuts. So
hmm
that's something that a lot of people didn't take
yeah.
into
That
account.
slashes out a part
Thank
of
you.
it of
Jill's
people.
helping us out. Ground providence. So
Uh,
that's what aardvrucht
I
is.
actually did not know that
Okay.
Profidians. That's a word, new
Yeah,
word I've learned.
providence.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. So the second round matchup is going to be an interesting one between Roti and Heri. Um, with, of course, Roti being the higher ranked. And then in the other bracket, Soto against Patat Boat. And this is what's really interesting because a lot of people were like, yeah, but what's that doing there? Because basically Patat Boat is just uh,
Fries with some barbecue chicken.
fries with barbecue chicken. And people were like, yeah, but how is that the national recipe? How is that a national dish? But that completely has to do with the fact that
Drive in any neighborhood at night, and you'll
yes,
find one
you can
within a 10
always
kilometers
find
radius.
barbecue chicken. It's totally about the barbecue chicken, and it has nothing to do with the fries. And oh, ground provisions. Okay,
Okay, so provisions isn't a word, people.
okay,
Provisions isn't a word. I need to
yeah, yeah,
correct that from Jill.
yeah,
It's provisions, ground provisions.
yeah. But even with the barbecue chicken, I mean, soto, like soto is the most popular soup in Suriname. Like has the most. So it was in the end a pretty easy decision for people. And then we had the nightmare matchup, which was masala duck, so duck curry against moxialesi, a mixed rice, and that was a really heartbreaking one. Um, Nobody really showed their grief to a, but there was a lot of grief, especially for the curry lovers. I mean, it was really disappointing for me personally. It was I like moxialesi too, but I would definitely go with duck curry. Um, then we got one of the easiest matchups so far, which was brown beans, bruine bonen, against pichel. And pichel was kind of the pick for, I think, the vegetarians and the vegans and the healthy people. And yeah, there was, I think bruine bonen got like
Yeah, get your
93%.
proteins.
Yeah. I think as well, if you would Google the national dish for Suriname, I think the brown beans with rice, the bruine bonen, it would show up the most. I think it's the most, even though it wasn't ranked number one in the pre-ranking, it definitely is the most recognized dish as
Yeah, I think
being
it,
the
it it
national dish.
goes into the data that's available, right? If we
Yeah,
think back on our conversation with around data,
yeah,
and that just goes to show that we need more data in online about Suriname. So the more people that post about it, share about it, blog about it in more formal settings with high quality picture that the bots can
oh,
recognize,
we'll
then
get into that in a second.
we,
Remind
we,
me
we
to
get
talk
more
about that.
information on that.
Yeah,
So uh, yeah, now I remember that episode. The episode with Andra
Andhra, yeah,
Wahmis.
exactly.
Yeah, he was talking about this, that
Yeah,
we need more data about anything basically. They were talking about animals in the interior and
yeah,
plants maybe, but even this things like this helps put us on the map. But you are saying, Jean Luc.
yeah. So and then the mashup from yesterday, which was a heartbreaking one as well, was Bami versus Nasi, which is basically
That's
two
a
of the
coin to
main.
us. That's a coin to us.
No, it isn't because I think so. It's basically Japanese noodles versus Japanese rice. Basically, that's what it comes down to. And first of all, there are enough rice dishes going through to the next round because today another one's gonna, tomorrow another one's gonna go through, and then there are already three because you have the mixed rice, you have the brown beans with rice, and today you have the pom with rice, and those three are gonna head to the next round. So it was nice to see a noodle dish come through. So Bami did win that next one. And today, as we are speaking now, there are I think already over 2,000 votes going on between Respong, which is really also kind of like bruine bonen national dish, and um, gribana, which is a soup made with plantain, which is especially among the older people, the older generation in Suriname, maybe even considered a more popular soup than soto, but it doesn't have the appeal and the wide kind of uh,
Yeah.
acceptance that soto has. So that matchup was kind of, and then people get upset with me like, how can you put these two over each other? But it's number three against number 14. So it is meant up as an unfair matchup
Yeah,
because
it's
the
just meant to,
yeah,
go into the finals to get it more spiced up.
yeah. So based on what I told you now, I'm wondering if you would be able to guess the final matchup for tomorrow.
I haven't seen any Chinese related dishes.
Yes.
So I definitely think something is gonna be. Is it gonna be a rice again or another soup?
What do you think is the most popular Chinese dish in Suriname?
I nasi, but nasi is already there, but that's Japanese nasi.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's fried rice. Yeah, I don't know.
You think Sofan is more popular than chow mein in Suriname?
Um, what's the first one?
Sofan, which is the fried rice, the Chinese fried rice, is more popular than. I think. See, that's the thing as well, and this is the discussion that I had with in the pre-ranking with people. Is like, if you're not able to say what the fried rice is called in in Chinese, then
In what Chinese? Because I understood the fun, but I think it's the I think that's
Shaofan.
Cantonese.
Cantonese. It's Cantonese, and it's even a specific region
Yeah,
in the south of China. But the fan, of course, you know because you speak Chinese
yeah,
and I
that's
don't.
rice.
So, but I think that's the important thing is that traditionally, and you see it with the Japanese noodles versus the Japanese rice. In the end, the
The noodles.
Japanese
Yeah.
noodles won. So that's the reason that chow mein also kind of beats out the Chinese fried rice and did get a secure slot within the top 16, whereas the Chinese fried rice didn't. And also, it's not like a lot of people love it, but they don't know what it's called in Chinese. So I think that's also kind of, and there's also not a Surinamese word invented for it.
Mm-hmm.
The people that know it,
Bigimiti, bigimiti.
yeah. So the people that know it, um, the people that know it call it by its Chinese name or at least a dialect from a Chinese version of the name, whereas most of the people just call it nasi, which in Asian is also called fried rice. So it kind of makes sense, but still they don't know what it's supposedly called in Chinese. So that's the biggest cultural difference, which kind of justifies chow mein, aside from the fact that there was a pre-ranking and chow mein just ranked higher. And then the
So
question is, can you guess what it's up against?
so that was gonna be my next question. Do you have hints for the people? Well, they're gonna see it tomorrow anyway. So
They're gonna see it,
when
but the hint is, I think it's one of the most requested soups. That every time I bring up this bracket, people are like, "Why is this soup not mentioned yet?" And also, it's indigenous, and it's one of the ones that is considered. So tomorrow is definitely gonna be a heartbreaking discussion
Pipewatra?
between like, yeah, exactly. You guessed it straight away. It's gonna be like an indigenous dish which always been there, which has a specific Surinamese name where people can say yes, it's ours and it's not available outside of Suriname, versus uh, versus a dish that people can get everywhere. So yes, the answer is correct, Jill. It's piprewata and so a chow fan or shao fan, depending on which region from China you're more familiar with. A lot of people like that one more, but most people, the majority, will go for chow mein. So that's the final matchup.
Yeah, that's gonna break
That's gonna
some.
spark some
Yeah,
debate.
that's
That's
gonna
gonna spark
break
some
some
debate.
comments.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
interesting.
yeah.
So, did you vote yourself on this?
Okay. So, as much as I like to speak about what I like to eat, I've decided not to vote myself because it could bring conflict. So, I've recused myself. I am very clearly stating when necessary what my favorite dish is. I go into the discussion like with peanut soup and heri with pinda soup and heri, I also prefer the soup. Like if you would ask me plain,
Hmm.
but then if I look back, for instance, on if you would give me the best soup, pinda soup in the world that I've tasted, and you would put it next
To the
uh,
best here you've
the
tasted.
best heri, I would probably go for the heri because I had some heris that were so freaking out of this world that even the best soup couldn't keep up with it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
And yeah, Jill, go spark some food wars tomorrow in the
yeah,
comments.
yes. But Pepperwati will need your vote because I do think they're in a minority, even though it's really considered a national dish.
Yeah, so if we've changed our you changed the naming of the competition, not the national dish but favorite national
Favorite, yeah.
dish. And if you're thinking about how countries basically categorize or what are the requirements for a national dish, as you said, piparwata is something, indigenous, it's rooted, but it's
Yeah.
very obscure and niche. So
Yes,
does does having a broad reach for something like soto weigh into that, into considering it a national dish, or is the obscurity also a part of the charm?
it really depends on how you look at it. And that's why we changed it to favorite because that moves away from that discussion. Because it's really hard to factor in that if something is really accepted and widely known, that becomes the representation.
Yeah.
So I think also one of the things, because I've already been asked, like, could we do pre-ranking competitions? Like, could we do competitions between just the soups? It's unfair to compare a soup to a rice dish. So can we just do a competition on the soups? What? So I'm already thinking like a global scale kind of World Cup kind of scenario where you have different groups, and then when you get to the main competition, you even have group rounds with round robin competing the dishes against each other,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then having the final one going through and going through undefeated, but then getting knocked out of the semis. I mean, it would be a lot of fun. I might do it next year, but for this year, I was like, okay, that's going to be a little too much. But one of the things that people also have to consider, like, it's also should also be a wake up call to like, hey, if this is so popular, why aren't there that many cooking competitions for that dish? Why are some of these dishes so hard to find in Suriname? Like a
Hmm.
good uh, um, a good soup or a good
And one part of
brown
it is
beans.
also how
Where do
easy
you
is
get
it
it?
to make? How much prep work is there? How easy are the ingredients to find? So some of them are more accessible to make, to prepare than others. So that's also a factor. That's why some of them are more widely known and accepted and more accessible to people.
So that's a good comment because um, for instance, we have Surinamese pie, it's kind of a pastry pie, kind of which called this what's called paste, right? And a lot of people were worried that we were going to put pom, which is kind of like the Surinamese version again of a, of the paste against each other. So pom versus paste. People were worried about that. And one of the arguments that I made was like, that's fun, but paste on its own, like the pie on its own, was is not gonna rank in the top 16. It's not gonna beat out pepre watra. It's not even gonna beat out barbecue chicken. Like it, even though it's loved and people put it together on itself, it isn't strong enough of a dish to be considered top 16. And so I basically said, well, it's kind of playing together with pom because a lot of people that create pom eat
Yeah,
paste.
it's usually a combo.
And then my dad yesterday was like, here, let me explain something to you. It's a little bit more expensive to make as well. So it's that makes it less accessible. Like you said, some of these dishes are just not as accessible for everyone. So it's really hard compared to a roti, which people will argue about, like, yeah, but you have roti everywhere in the world. There are Caribbean countries that have roti. You have original roti from India. So no, it's not as exclusive to Suriname as other recipes or other dishes, but it is maybe the most popular dish in Suriname.
All right, so if we're looking at the competition and how many days is this going to go? It's like every day. So I think by the end of next week we
Next
should
week,
have
yeah,
the winner, and that's a good way to close off or enter December, the party month. And
yes, because
I
that's
am
definitely next up.
I
Yeah,
imagine something cooking up there. So I imagine an interesting segue into the festivities going into December, with especially food related.
yeah. So there's a lot of spin-off possible. It's getting some traction. There are also some national media stations, whether it's radio or the newspaper, that kind of want to jump in on it. Um, I mean, if there are like restaurants that want to jump into it, they're more than welcome to. And for as far as making it commercial, I have no interest this year. But for next year, if we decide to pull it through, there will be. And also, this was
Uh,
just the first series because there are other competitions. The national animal competition, we're gonna do it because we're discussing it in the group that originally came with the idea to say like, hey, after this food thing is over, we're gonna go to the next topic.
yeah, and that's good data to crowdsource to basically distill the identity of the country into what is the widely accepted represented. How do people perceive these things instead of assuming? And this is with data. And
And this
I
is
think
with good
that's a
data.
good
Yeah.
use of Facebook, of
Yes,
social
it's a
media
very,
data.
very good use of data, Facebook, and that's something that I'm going to mention to companies as well because, like, right now, 1% of our country is actually voting, which doesn't seem like a lot.
Oops, my light went out.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But 1% of a nation voting is actually, it's actually quite a lot.
Yeah.
So, so that also brings in the interest to say like, hey, we can do more with it. But you mentioned something earlier that I do want to jump into photos because we were talking about data and like how much information is available on these dishes, on the ways they were prepared or being prepared, but also the history of where it came from. Like there's a lot of knowledge, but there's fairly limited information readily available online. And then we get to some of these dishes and we get to stock images or freely accessible images to use. And there's a reason why I'm making these images so small in the competition. And the reason, they're not necessarily the best food photographs. I do have the luck that there have been people and restaurants that were like, okay, you can use our photos. Because getting copyright free images of these dishes is quite challenging. And I don't want people to get upset saying, like, hey, but this is an image from a Dutch stock website and it doesn't represent how the recipe
Yeah.
or the dish really looks. And like, yeah, but I'm only allowed to use copyright free images or images that I've got people's permission to
Yeah.
use. And
Or
that makes
images
it,
that you made yourself.
or images that I made myself, but getting those, I didn't beforehand think beforehand like, oh, I'm gonna run a food composition, so let me start taking pictures, quality pictures of those dishes. The only pictures of food that I have in my phone are from
Themselves.
Christmas. Christmas, dim sum. It's not those kind of dishes, so it's not like often, like for instance, if I'm gonna eat a banana bone or a rice palm, I'm not gonna be like, oh, let me get a cool photo for a contest. I'm like, I'm hungry, and I just dive in. So, or if it's a, I actually tried for roti. I went back to one of the vlogs. I featured on a vlog from there's a
I, I
king. where we had a roti eating competition, and I wasn't able to find a decent
I
screenshot
actually
in
want
there
to
of a
bring
roti.
something up. You
Yeah.
bringing up roti and looking for photos, and I imagine this was the reason. I think somewhere last week, I suddenly got a notification from our Confoes Discord, which we used in the early beginning. So I got a notification. I was like, "Who's posting in the Convos? It's been inactive for in the Convos Discord. It's been inactive for a while." So I checked the different channels and I saw the Artbot channel lit up. So I went into it and I saw the MeBot, Jean-Luc SR prompted some images and it was for Surinamese roti.
Oh, this
And
is so
oh
funny.
my,
This is so funny. The
I
AI.
laughed for I don't know 5 to 10 minutes straight because I think I should just screen share this. So if you
Yeah,
give me
you
a
should
moment
screen
to
share it.
grab
So
it,
imagine, I went to AI for help. I thought like, okay, AI is not gonna get it perfect, but maybe I'm able to use AI to create some dishes that represent certain meats. And to be honest, if I would have gone a little bit further, I would have used certain images to create those AI images. But I got so demotivated by these results because
so the
I
basic
tried to get
prompt
Surinamese roti.
the basic prompt was Surinamese roti and roti food. You added food as an extra descriptor in the prompt, and it basically rendered a
Rodent.
non-existing prehistoric reptilian
Rodent.
rodent in the desert, which is roti food. So I just thought it was a kick, and I couldn't stop laughing. And now I have the context of what you were busy with when you prompted that.
Because
So
I
for the
think this
people,
happened right after Confoes. Like after the last week's episode, I
so
started searching
for the
for
people
these
just
pictures.
listening, I do encourage you go to around 37 minutes to the YouTube video and just look at the screen on what he prompted and have a laugh at that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think images was really something that I didn't underestimate it. I really got a lot of help. I really got. I have to give a shout out to the Fudiping and to at Fat and even I asked Freestyle if they won the duck curry competition. So I was like, hey, can I please take a picture because I'm not able to find a proper a copyrighted picture for duck curry. So they helped me with that as well. And if it wasn't for them, like I mean Prince, uh, even I think for the hair area as well, we had to take it from somewhere else. It wasn't posted, so I did get some good help to get the right pictures. But I kept the picture small because I wanted to avoid the discussion like, yeah, but that doesn't look like a proper this dish, and
Yeah,
then
so the
being
discussion is gonna be
yeah.
this is high quality versus low quality.
Or if it's
The
if it's this
presentation of
picture, if this dish is this picture, I'm not voting for it. Like those kind of things.
yeah, so you need to equalize it in
Yeah.
some way. But yeah, excited to see what's how this competition is gonna roll out, and we'll have a collection of national food dishes to
And
represent
a ranking.
Suriname and a
And
ranking
yeah,
for this year,
yeah.
and might be a recurring thing. Who knows? And might be built upon. And maybe this is also a trigger or maybe an instigator for restaurants to maybe come up with content, maybe how to prepare these some high quality content, not just for their social media, but just to elevate these dishes on a search index worldwide.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, get more pride. And I think that's one of the most fulfilling things is that Surinamese people love food and we settle differences through food. It's like sports and food. really help bring positivity, and music as well. I think that's also very, so there are these elements, these things that bring us more together and give us a nationalistic feel like, hey, we're proud of this. And that's what it's doing. Of course, there are some negative comments as well, as into like, yes, I don't like this dish. But the majority of the response is very heartwarming and positive. And that also kind of brings you more together as, and of course the competition is gonna get harder. Like, I mean, I'm not looking forward to the finals and the semifinals and the final. The next round two is gonna be like, people will get upset, but starting the semifinals, that's where people are really gonna start getting upset and are really gonna start to fight to vote. And so far, everybody has been really positive, even on the first topic, that make it favorite. Don't call it the national dish of Suriname. Even when the people gave the feedback, they were very nice about it
Constructive,
and
yeah.
very constructive in their criticism. Yeah.
And that just goes to show, there can be positive, fun, engaging content on social media. You don't need to go into the rabbit hole of the negativity and everything. So keep it fun, have the pride, and engage in this type of content to help the algorithm. Like we've talked about, organic reach and all that. And I'm also excited to, after this experiment ends, to see the results, not just about the food, but also the approach to data and engagement for individuals, for people who are on social media and creating content. With that being said, Shanduk, any last things you want to tease or announce before winding
Wow,
down?
we're getting into the December month. It's a very busy month for me. I have like at least 4 or 5 birthdays in that month, and then we're not even talking about Christmas and all the gatherings that happen towards the end of the year. I do feel we can do a special episode on Sirifesta and the Uruyari celebrations. So I'll make sure to have a guest in for that as well. And as we round up the year, we do want to remind you that we're going to open up next year with a bang as well. So please stay posted. Please watch us or listen to us every week.
Subscribe to the newsletter that's
Don't
coming
forget to
out,
subscribe to the newsletter,
where,
because a
where we're
lot of
trying button.
information will be shared there.
Yeah, newsletters coming out, and basically that's gonna be the best gateway to get, the latest content, get curated content if you missed episode from a year ago and that's maybe relevant now. We try to group that up if you listen to an episode today, and oh, what's the topic, or what was he referring to, the episode with Andra Wagmeester about data, go check that out. So that's what we're trying to do. And I'd say enjoy December. We got a few days to go.
Have a great day. Thank you again. This was Social Confoes. See you back next week. Same place, same time.